Hi there, this is Dylis Guyan and welcome to the Inspired Selling Podcast. And once again, I have another fabulous guest for you, Mike Foster. And I just want to give you a little bit of background about Mike. He is founder, director and entrepreneur. He's a mentor, speaker, author and business growth advisor, helping business owners to consider, start up, develop and grow their own businesses and achieve success by their own definition. And I love this about Mike, that it's not about him, it's about his clients, and him and I share this vision of being client focused in exactly the same way. And having started in the startup market or worked in the startup market for nearly 20 years, Mike has been studying the market, the types of business and the different types of business owners. And he truly understands what contributes to success and how so many fail despite the hard work. And his specialism, in fact, is demonstrated working with professional services providers such as bookkeepers, accountants, lawyers, leisure and hospitality businesses, and the not-for-profit charity sector. I've known Mike a lot of years and I highly respect him, and lots of people respect him as a mentor and a truly motivational character who will inspire you into action. And he is committed to making it work for you. So welcome, Mike. I'm absolutely delighted to have you on the show today. So before we kind of get into the meat of things, just give us a kind of brief synopsis of who you've worked for, just so people can get a better feel of your expertise and have context of who you are.
Well, thank you, Dylis. Thank you for that introduction. Very kind.
You're very welcome.
Made me blushing here right now. So my background, I left school to join Barclays, made my way to be the area manager for Barclays startups in Oxfordshire. Mm-hmm. Fantastic role. Business startup got into my DNA, if you like. That's where we met at Barclays, and you know how passionate I was about that role. I was then asked to go and join the leisure industry and start up a leisure company in South Oxfordshire called South Oxfordshire Leisure, or was known as then Sol. Ended up running Didcot Wave, Didcot Leisure Centre facilities as their contract manager. And then I had this burning desire to really run my own businesses. And then that journey of running my own businesses started. I had a number of businesses. I had my own bookkeeping company, a marketing company, a health and safety training business, eventually had an indoor soft play centre. So a little bit of diversity there. And back in 2013, I sold my bookkeeping practice and then looked into membership organisations, went to work for a membership organisation in London, and eventually started my own, or co-founded my own bookkeepers organisation to help them start, develop and grow their own bookkeeping practice called the Bookkeepers Alliance. And you kindly spoke at one of our conferences, you may remember.
I do.
And September last year, I was approached by the managing director of Chapman Robinson & Moore, and since December, I've been a full-time employee of Chapman Robinson & Moore Accountants in Kidlington as their commercial director, helping them embrace a little bit of change, but also prepare for the future and help the continued growth of this accountancy practice.
And really, it is a real benefit to them having you there, because I know your passion, I know how committed you are to your clients and so on. So pat on the back to them for headhunting you into that position. And I know that Chapman Robinson and Moore, which we refer to as CRM, have really built their brand around the theme of helping clients make their numbers work. And you and I know that this is the foundation, really. But is this not what all accountants do? So why, first of all, why have they chosen that theme to differentiate their brand? And why is it so important to know your numbers?
Yes, it's a good question. And I think, yes, to a degree, accountants do base their business around the numbers because that's their expertise. That's in effect what they should be mentoring their clients about. What we found when we were looking at our brand, and I've been supporting CRM through my marketing company for a number of years, so it's sort of like a historic relationship. But what we established is that we wanted to make sure that our clients not only understood the numbers in their accounts, i.e. what does turnover mean, what does cost of sales mean, what do all these expenses mean, what does the balance sheet mean, but also fundamentally what makes up those numbers. So in effect, what we call the real numbers in the business. So what are the real numbers that, for example, make up the turnover in the business? What are the real numbers that impact on the cost of sales or a certain expense within the business impacting on the net profit? So I think all accountants will support their clients around the numbers, but predominantly from a compliance perspective, to help them complete their accounts and their tax return requirements. However, I don't think all accountants help their clients to truly understand the numbers in their accounts. And when I was running the Bookkeepers Alliance and supporting bookkeepers and small accountancy practices, I was able to see a number of models across the UK, able to get quite a close relationship with some of the software companies to understand other models. And I felt that we wanted to embrace this numbers aspect, our expertise, if you like, of how we help our clients make the numbers work. And I think although the accountants do embrace supporting their clients from a numbers perspective, we want to help them plan, look forward and understand the real numbers in their business that truly impact on their performance.
And there are so many businesses who don't even think about this. It's one of those areas of unconscious incompetence in a way, because people don't know what they don't know. So what are the ramifications of not fully understanding these numbers?
Well, I think traditional accountancy support is predominantly looked at the historic numbers in the accounts and only what's in effect happened in the past. And yes, some accountants, I suppose, like us, will help clients understand those accounts, but often it's, I suppose, far too late for them to be able to make decisions. So, the traditional picture you may see is someone gets to their year end, it takes a while to get the accounts to their accountant. By the time the accounts are completed, it might be 5 to 9 months before they've got the accounts and the information is out of date to make that decision. We want to be up to date with our clients. We want to have live information so that we're helping our clients work, I suppose, with timely decisions to help change the performance of their business. And
often they just keep doing what they've always done, and don't stop and really look at these numbers and the impact of them. And I know we're going to dig deeper into this.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
I agree with what you're saying. I think, I love the gut, being an entrepreneur myself, I love the gut feel that we have as entrepreneurs, and quite often it's accurate, but I like to have some factual behind that as well. So, having some performance, comparing it against your industry, understanding what things can be done differently, are all things that I advocate to businesses to look at and continue how they can make the numbers work in their business.
Yeah, brilliant. So talking about numbers, what specific numbers do you help your clients with?
I suppose to a degree they're personalised on a client-by-client basis, depending on perhaps the industry they're in or what the focus of that business may be. We, like I say, work with our clients to truly understand the real numbers that impact the success of their business, particularly the turnover and their bottom line profit. So we will work with the business in a simple model in terms of sales, say, okay, well, is it the number of customers times by the number of times they buy, times by the average sale value? But also we look at some of the factors that are impacting on their profitability. So one that I was looking at only this morning with a client was their productivity ratio. So what's their staff cost compared to that turnover? And it was a number they'd not looked at before. And when we compared it, benchmarked that to others in their industry, they were slightly behind their industry. So it made them sort of think about, okay, well, where can we make some savings and bring some better performance to our bottom line? Yeah.
And it's all about these marginal gains, isn't it?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, we do like to sort of look at the business, look at the number of factors, and then combine those factors for the cumulative effect. So, if we can improve our turnover a little bit, we can improve the cost of sales a little bit, we can reduce the expenses a little bit more. The cumulative effect of all those together is greater than the individual on their own.
Yeah.
And again, we look at those and say, okay, if we've got 5 or 6 factors, what are the marginal gains philosophy of saying, okay, how can we improve those sales just a little bit? How can we change the cost of sales just a little bit and see the impact?
Yeah.
And it helps the mindset, I think, for the business owners.
Indeed. And I think I may have told this story before, so for listeners or viewers who've heard this before, apologise, but this is really relevant to what we're talking about here. And I may have even shared this story with you when I heard Chris Hoy, the Olympic cyclist, on a stage, and he was fantastic, and he was talking about marginal gains. And he said, I wasn't born an Olympic gold medalist. I was an 8-year-old boy who got a BMX bike and then joined the cycling club. And he said, the coach got us together. He said, we're just young lads, and asked us to write down our goals. What was our dream? He said, and I wrote down that I wanted to be a gold medalist in the Olympics. He said, and all of my mates laughed, but the coach didn't. And the coach said, if that's what you want, then we'll look at the steps. Because it's always about the steps, isn't it? Mm-hmm. The steps to improvement. And so they worked on the steps. And he said all of the time they were making marginal gains in each step, which then gave them that overall huge gain, because it was just marginal gains in each one of those. Yep. And this is very relevant, isn't it, to what we are talking about, because I know that you've got 8 steps of business improvement, and that's what you focus on. So just talk to us about that.
Yeah, and that's something that really resonates with me, because a phrase that I use quite often is making a step change.
Yeah.
And that step change, as you know, is how can we go from where we are now just to make one step forward? And if we can make some step forward and gain some momentum, create some good habits in the business, then we're moving in the right direction. Now, our 8 steps, what we decided as a business is that a number of accountants have moved from the compliance side of the business to the advisory services. But we wanted something that blended the two, something that our clients could come to us and get the support for the things they have to do, tax returns and annual accounts, but also get the support from the advisory service to help them develop the business as they'd want to see it. Mm-hmm. As I say, where the personalisation comes in. It started back probably 8 years ago now, when we did some research with a group of accountants across the UK to try and establish what the more successful businesses did every single year without fail. And once we got that research together, we decided how could we adopt that into a program. And the 8 steps predominantly take you through, well, first of all, the planning stages, and it fundamentally holds the 8 steps together. Is that if you plan what it is that you really want. This is what we were talking about at length recently. Plan what it is, what you really want, and why you really want it. Then you can establish to understand the real numbers that you want to measure and control. So the second step is then, once you've established that, is put the forecast together based on how you're going to get to where you want to get to. Because again, I'm sure you've seen it, and we were talking about this at one of our exit planning seminars recently. A lot of businesses wait until they want to retire when it's then time to sell the business. If that's their exit, then they want £1 million for the business, or whatever that number may be, and then suddenly, oh, surprise, surprise, it's not worth that amount. So working backwards and putting a forecast to get them to that direction. Then once you've got a forecast, you've then got some management accounts that you can run off the back of that to measure those specific, what we call key predictive indicators. Now, they're quite commonly referred to key performance indicators, but again, key performance tends to be looking backwards, whereas we use the word predictive to predict what we need to measure looking forward to change the performance of the business. Then obviously, if you're doing monthly management accounts, the next step is then how that feeds into the compliance step of actually having your accounts completed at year end. And then we go through steps such as evaluation, when we're evaluating like-for-like periods, year on year. We're looking at benchmarking against that similar businesses within the industry, and we're evaluating performance. So one of the other things we try to understand in terms of the true numbers in the business isn't just, has your turnover gone up? And that's a tick in the box maybe, but have you retained your margins that you wanted to do? Have you retained in that growth? Have you retained your debtor days, so you're collecting your cash just as quickly when you didn't have so much business, for example? So again, the good habits are maintained as the business grows. And there may be a reason why someone's lost their gross margin, for example, because they've perhaps gone on a sales push to drive turnover. And then the last couple of steps around valuation, understanding the valuation. Now, this isn't necessarily always about a valuation to sell the business, but this is more about valuing consistently year on year and understanding how your past performance has impacted on that valuation. So is it some non-financial performance indicators, i.e., am I now less reliant in working in the business, or it might be a financial performance, i.e. more turnover. Does that impact on that valuation? And the last two steps are really around improvement. What improvements can be made? So we do a lot of what if scenarios. What if you lost your best customer? What if you gained another one of those customers? What if your main member of staff left? What if you needed to recruit 5 more staff? What if scenarios? And then once we can establish those, we then reset and we look at the improvement potential within the business and say, okay, what's the improvement plan we need to put into the business?
Yeah. And often people think that business growth is just about bringing in more business, but it's much deeper than that.
Yeah.
And these are the elements that you've just covered there, looking at those in a deeper way to really analyse what's happening and where you can make those marginal gains and keep moving forward all of the time.
I like that phrase you just said, because that's my MD's favourite saying, is that as a business, you're never stagnating. You're either moving forwards and you're moving backwards, and you choose which direction you want to go. Yeah. And we've probably moved away from the word growth. It's probably an overused phrase, and it's probably a phrase that some businesses have sort of ducked away from, because a lot of businesses don't see they want to grow in terms of grow their turnover, but they do want to develop their business. They want to make it more efficient and more effective towards achieving their goals. So.
And to leverage.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And I noticed that one of the steps is around benchmarking. So why is that an important part of your focus with your clients?
Again, I think it comes back to the point I was saying earlier in terms of, I think a lot of business owners have a great gut feeling for their business, but what's the fact behind that? So, for example, if I said to a business, did you have a good year last year? And they'd say, yeah, I've had a great year. Or I've had a bad year. Or on what basis? And I think where this resonated with me, as I was talking to a guy in the construction trade a couple of years ago, obviously when we're going through a recession, I said, how was your year? Shocking. Absolutely shocking. He said, I've had a really bad year. I said, okay, on what basis? And he said, well, obviously not so many orders, etc., etc. I said, okay, how does that compare against your industry? I said, don't really know. So we did a bit of a comparison industry benchmark for him, and actually he was way above his industry peers. Right. So after that reflection, okay, yeah, you might have had a bad year, but you're beating yourself up perhaps more than you need to, because you had a better year than others. And again, you could swing that the other way and say, I've had a great year. Well, okay, you've only had a great year perhaps because your industry's had a great year, for example. So I think there's sort of a leveling, if you like. And what we tend to find when we do the benchmarking is, for example, a case study can give you is that I was talking to somebody last week, and we benchmarked them, and we do a traffic light system, how you compare against different areas, about 20 different areas. And he was green all the way, apart from just the one. And I just said, look, fantastic news, but there's one area we can still focus on. There's still a learn from this exercise. And again, that's the one that he's now building into his plan for his improvement plan, about how he can change that one thing in the business and be green right across
all the way through. Board. Yeah. Yes, yeah. Marginal gains once again.
Incremental changes, marginal gains, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. I just think that the support that you give it's outstanding, but it is differentiated from your competitors. There is no question about that. I know that there are some accountants who work in a similar way, but I haven't actually come across any who've got these 8 specific steps that you can work with. And so in terms of giving that support, how does that pan out practically? What is it you offer, or how does it work if you're working with me, for example?
Yeah, I think in terms of practicality, we look to make the numbers work for our business at every single touch point with our clients, and that's really where it started as a program, but it actually evolved to be our brand. So at every touch point with our client, we're looking about how we can help them make their numbers work, develop their numbers, etc. Now, although there's 8 steps, you may choose to say that actually I only need the support in 4, 5, 7 steps, for example. And that works, and that's how we would apply that. And it really depends in terms of how much support you want. Obviously, it all comes together within the 8 steps, and it works as a cycle. So once you've done the improvement plan, you go back to revisit your goals, and then you, in effect, sort of start to measure those through again. But I think it's really about proactively working with our clients to establish what it is they really want to achieve, which of those 8 steps are going to help them do that, and predominantly coming back to our point about making a step change to create some good habits within their business. And it's predominantly making that step change to create habits. And it's a phrase that's again, well used, but I do like it. If you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got.
Yeah.
We're trying to just break that habit for a lot of our clients to sort of just take a step back and say, okay, what could I do slightly differently that could improve the performance of the business and implement some good behaviours and habits within the business.
And what comes through strongly, Mike, right from the beginning of us talking together today, is this focus on what your clients want. It's not about them fitting your process. It's about your process fitting them, their business, and what they want. And, looking, for example, at the valuation, but what is it that they want from the business at the end? What do they want their business to do for them? And we've touched on this earlier, but you really do encourage your clients to reflect on their valuation early on, as opposed to waiting to to that date when they think, right, we're going to sell the business, this was our pension, and they find out that in fact it's not as valuable as they thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
So why do you encourage businesses? But I mean, I've kind of answered it then, but just kind of flash that out a bit more for us.
Yeah, I think like I say, for many, the exit or the sale of the business is their retirement plan, or that key part of their next personal plan. And it's about looking forward. And you kindly said in the introduction, one of my focuses, certainly how we embrace this at CRM, is success can only be defined by the business owner themselves. So, I could put a valuation on someone's business, what they should need for their retirement, etc. But I don't know what their lifestyle is going to want to be. So success for them, whether it's that as a marker or it's another measurement within, we allow our business owners to define that to us and we help them achieve that. So from a exit planning perspective, it's about saying, okay, well, when do you want to retire? How do you want to retire? And what are you going to do in retirement? So, when, for example, the obvious one is say, I'm at retirement age, but there's people that want to go earlier. There's a lot of people that actually want to stay in the business and keep. I think people are finding it a little bit more difficult to sell the business for the valuation they want, but actually finding it's probably more profitable to stay in and earn out as a pension whilst they're still working in it, perhaps on a part-time basis.
Yeah.
How much in terms of what they're going to need in terms of to exit from, and then what they're going to do afterwards. So what they're going to do afterwards, again, do I just want to, I've sold my business or I've handed the business over, do I want to stay involved? My experience is quite a lot of businesses, once they've lost control, they want out to go and do something, but what are you going to go and do? And have you got the fund from that sale to do so? And then once we understand that fund that we're aiming for, it's okay, where do you want to get to? And where are we now?
Yeah.
And what steps do we need to do to get there? And sometimes that can be quite a reality check for the businesses in terms of whether they've overvalued the business or sometimes even undervalued the business.
Yeah. And of course, buyers are always interested in risk. Of course, the valuation, the pound valuation is important, but it's like, what risk am I taking here? So the more robust the business is within those steps that you cover, it reduces the risk for buyers.
I think that's the other factor is in terms of one of the exercises we do around if someone's looking to exit is getting them to understand who their likely buyers are likely to be, and then understanding the motivations for those buyers. So is it risk? Is it cash return? And then when you're building the business towards that valuation, you're thinking about those factors as well. So, am I in effect making it very lean to generate the cash, or am I just reducing the risk by bringing in a number of managers rather than just relying on one manager, for example, if it was the structure of the business that was at risk.
And what I really love about you, Mike, and I love a lot of things, as you know, professionally, of course, is your background in banking has really given you that edge over a lot of people who are doing the same work as you, because you've got that financial background, you've got qualifications in that area that you can bring into this role with Chapman, Robinson and Moore. I have to say that just to remind people this isn't a CRM system.
Yeah, we do get confused with that sometimes.
Exactly. So, again, offering a really great service. But I'm going to go back to the steps that we talked about. So is there one step in there that you feel is the most important or more important than the others? If so, what would that be?
Yeah, I think the most important step has to be that planning stage. For the businesses who are in the program for the first year, because it fundamentally sets the rest of the program up. Because again, it's planning what they really want in terms of some personal goals and business goals. And I'm sure you work with more businesses than I do in terms of that area. But how many businesses misalign their business and the personal goals? So, for example, they think they know what they want for their personal goals. I want to move to a bigger house or fund the children going to university, but then misalign that actually my only income is the business. So the business has got to have some goals to generate cash, for example. So we work with that alignment of business and personal goals where relevant. We also work with our businesses to make sure all the stakeholders are aligned. So, for example, if there's two partners in the business and they're working towards an exit, are they working to a common exit? Or even if they're, we had a discussion probably a month ago now whereby one business wanted to grow. One business owner, wanted to grow. The partner in the business was quite happy where the business was and didn't want any more risk, as you quite rightly say. So a lot of that planning is really about alignment, clarity, having clarity about what they're striving to achieve. And then from that perspective, I think then the next stage is then where we work in terms of using our expertise and passion around the numbers, which not everybody's got that that passion, if you like. Is to help them then build that into a forecast and actually say, okay, not just in terms of what's your profit forecast going to be, but how's that going to impact in terms of your balance sheet and your cash flow? So again, I think most businesses tend to understand the phrases that you would see in a profit and loss forecast. But when you talk about some of the balance sheet items, there's probably less of an understanding, debtors, creditors, and liabilities and capital account, etc. And the cash flow is something probably that comes on a little bit of a whim, if you like, in terms of am I going to be lucky in terms of what the forecast produces from a result in cash, if you like. So again, the second sort of underpinning part to that planning, that important planning stage, is identifying what the real numbers are that you need to focus on that we can then build into the forecast. And like I say, that's not just the resulting important number of sales, but what's the fundamentally making up your sales. So for example, a restaurant, which again, one of our expertise is here, we're talking to a restaurant, okay, well, what is it? Is it the number of covers that you're selling at an average price? Is it the number of bookings on a weekly basis you're achieving that's impacting your success rate, etc. So we can measure not just those financial numbers that go into the accounts, but those underlying numbers that drive that.
Yeah, and businesses need someone like you, in fact, to be able to prompt their thinking and ask the relevant questions, because we know that entrepreneurs and smaller businesses will just keep on being busy every day, and right down to, for example, discounts. And this is a hobby horse of mine, where people will give discounts and say, well, I've given 10% discount on, let's say, a £10,000 product or service. But when you look at the margin is much less. So in real terms, they're giving a much bigger discount, and they're not realizing the impact of that. And so they need someone like you to be able to challenge their thinking. And again, that would make a huge marginal gain. And it's about the understanding and the mindset when they're selling to someone and being prepared to give a discount, and then thinking about, well, having spoken to Mike, I understand the real impact here.
You're right. And someone asked me the other day, or challenged me the other day, so you don't really understand our type of business, do you? And I said, well, admittedly, I don't understand what you make and what you sell as we stand here. Right? But once I get to know the business, I'll have an understanding of that. But actually, I don't need to tell you to do that, because you know how to do that. My role can help you, in effect, play a little bit devil advocate, can challenge you, or challenge you with some questions you may not ask yourselves, or B, come in from a supportive aspect and share with you what I've experienced with helping clients like yourself, not perhaps in the same industry, but like you say, the discounts one is very common in terms of it can happen in X business, it can happen in Y, but the impact tends to be fairly similar.
Yeah. And the other area where I see businesses fall down is that, and it relates back to what you talked about in the planning phase of not just looking at the planning for your business, but looking at the planning personally. And it's the business that funds the personal. So it's really important if they're saying, I want a bigger house, or I need school fees, or it's, I need university fees this much per year, or whatever. And then looking into the business and saying, so how much does the business need to generate? And it's not just turnover. You have to take into account margin again, and saying, right, so if I need this much, I need to have gross and a gross amount, but then looking at the margin that actually they can draw from to help them fund all of those personal things. But again, this can be missed, and they forget. And then once they've got that figure, they forget to chunk it down and break it down into monthly, weekly, daily. I always say to my clients, you can't eat an elephant in one go, but you can in bite-sized chunks.
Yeah. And one of the lovely things I remember about working with yourself was that it was taking that big goal and saying, okay, that's your 5-year goal, and let's bring it down to 12. Let's bring it down to 6 months. Let's bring it down to 90 days. What we're going to do next week. Things like that. And it's a little bit like what we do with the numbers. In terms of saying, what is that big goal number that you want to achieve? And what needs to be done in a shorter term to kickstart that activity,
Yeah, exactly.
But it's it's a very common one I find with business owners to say, actually, I want a bottom line additional profit of 10% of £10,000, for example. And based on my numbers I've done in the past, that means to get an extra £10,000 out the bottom, I've got to put another £100,000 on top. So they go banging away to get more sales and get another 100,000. But actually, if you look at the fundamental bits in between about what's driving that bottom line profit, whether it's productivity, whether it's overhead costs that haven't been reviewed for the last 5 years, etc., actually it might only take 50,000 to get that extra 10 out the bottom if you make some improvements in other areas. So again, coming back to the marginal gains comment you made.
Exactly. So how do you consider the improvement plan? What goes into that?
I think the considerations really around the improvement plan are all the factors we've discussed. I think predominantly the underlying impact is the vision and the goals, but there's an element of the performance, there's an element of the economic and industry factors that are impacting on that business. And I think the collective information that we then get from this sensitivity analysis that we do, so the what-if questions, that helps our clients to consider and reflect on those questions to say, okay, well, if I do that, what are my options? And then that comes back down to a word you mentioned earlier, how much risk do I want to take to achieve that, and looking at those options. And I think quite a bit works around that sensitivity analysis, because that's when we do get a little bit challenging. That's where we've probably understood the business and we can look at it from our expertise of numbers and also their expertise, and actually understanding, okay, well, that's your best case scenario, how much do you really want it? That's your worst case scenario, how much do you really want to avoid it? And whereabouts in the middle do you want to sit, basically.
Fantastic, and really great insights that you've shared with us today, Mike. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you to really take a deeper dive into the business, how would they contact you?
Okay, so our website's, which has just been redesigned, but it's www. Yes, not quite live, but hopefully soon. But www.crmoxford.co.uk, or our telephone numbers 01865 379 272.
Excellent. Can you just repeat that number again there, Mike?
Yes, it's Oxford's. That's 01865 379 272.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I hope it's given our viewers and listeners some insights into just stepping back for a moment, taking time to talk to you and analyse the business and see where they can make those marginal gains without having to work that much harder, really.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dylis. Thank you for the opportunity to join you and share some thoughts as always.
Thank you very much, Mike. It's been a pleasure. Bye.
Thanks, Dylis. Bye now.
Bye.